You're listening to Learning Leader Spotlight, interviews with corporate L&D leaders. On each episode, we sit down with key industry experts to discover more about what's happening in the world of learning and development, from current trends and insights to the most valuable lessons learned along the way. Join us for a fresh perspective on all things training and the best direction forward.
Welcome to Learning Leader Spotlight, where we interview the learning leaders of today to help the learning leaders of tomorrow. I'm your guest host, Shanir Marchand, and I am a relationship manager with Training Pros, the sponsor of this podcast. Training Pros is a learning and development contract staffing company. We like to say, when you have more projects than people, let us help find the best consultant to start your project with confidence. I would like to introduce you today to an amazing thought leader, Christina Castelli, who is the head of learning measurement at Accenture. I've recently had the opportunity to meet Christina through a few mutual connections, and I've really enjoyed our conversations, and I think you will too. Christina, I'm so glad that you're here joining us today. Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
Of course. If you don't mind, would you just start by telling us a little bit about your background, how you found your way into learning and development, a little bit more about you?
I started with Accenture. I mean, I had a couple small jobs before that, but most of my career has been spent here. But I started in the consulting side of the house. Did a lot of our, whether it's organizational or HR or training or communications consulting with various companies throughout the US and overseas. And then I wanted to move internal. I saw some of the work we were able to do with clients, and I was curious about how we did it for ourselves. And I was able to have a chance to make that move. So I focused on social learning at first. Then I went through and did a lot of learning design, learning development. Then I moved into learning operations, and now I am working on our measurement for the organization. But it was a long and kind of winding road to get here.
Well, sometimes those are the vast kind of roads, right?
So
Well, really, what caused you to kind of turn into and lean into learning operations and measurement? If you share a little bit about that.
I think it's the problem that many people, I think, will be familiar with, where we found ourselves saying, this is great, this is valuable. I feel like I'm pretty certain of the value. People are liking it. They're leaving inspired. They seem to be getting what they want out of the organization. And on the other hand, a challenge in clarifying to the business what that value looks like in business terms, right? And sometimes it does seem like people are speaking two different languages. And if we could just figure out and get our folks within learning to understand that language and speak it a little bit better and more clearly, that we would be able to share those insights. At the same time, I don't want to say that it's something where like learning was amazing and the business didn't know what they were talking about. By no means, right? I think sometimes I saw the learning organization, maybe you become a little too fond of something that had been around for a long time, or that was fun, or that had its own cachet, and not really think, is this meeting the problems of the business? We are still a corporate learning environment. We are not a private learning environment for anybody who wants to pay to come and show up, right? So ultimately the business is paying for this. Are we meeting our needs? And so it would happen on both sides. And I wanted to try to be able to, I think, protect and encourage that amazing work, that creative work, that design work that I always loved, while by making it more understandable and more documentable and clear for the business.
Got it. That absolutely resonates and makes a lot of sense. And I know that when we've spoken previously, that you mentioned that you've created Accenture's kind of learning measurement strategy and helped save a significant amount of time that had been previously spent on individual measurement strategies, right? So I was curious, what prompted that specific work and what made your strategy effective there?
What prompted it is that we had gone through multiple models, right? There's many learning measurement models out there today, and I will be 100% honest. I think they're all good. They're all equally. I'm not saying ours is better. Ours is better for us. And what we realized we had to do was to create something that met a couple of specific needs of our organization. So if you look at our model, we call it the SKY model. The levels of our model are very similar to like a Kirkpatrick model, right? You have your what we call satisfaction, then you have knowledge, then you have application, then you have impact, right? What's different in our model is two things. One, you have to answer a question first. What are the business outcomes? Before you even go to the next step. If you measure the satisfaction, but you didn't first identify what the business outcome was, is satisfaction even a measure of it? Now, if the business outcome is generally we want people to be more happy that they are here at Accenture, right? Or that we want to retain people, we want to improve engagement, or even just we want them to generally like be better at their job that we can't really fully describe or define, then actually satisfaction is a great metric because it's a good documentation of like people came here, they were happy to be here, they left pleased. That connects to that business outcome. So it's still, that's the second piece that's different, is that we feel that every section of the model can and should be connected to that business outcome. So unlike a more traditional, maybe Kirkpatrick pyramid, where you have to get all the way up to the pyramid to then find the ROI, we say, no, you identify the outcome first and you draw these dotted lines from each of those pieces. We also state that it is not necessarily the best thing for every program to measure every level, right? You might want to do an application metric, and it might not make sense for your program to do like a level 2 or a K metric, because maybe you're not teaching a lot of specific measurable skills that can be tested. What you actually want to see is, are people having different conversations afterwards, right? Well, if so, why do you don't have to spend your time doing the K or level 2, because that's not meeting your business outcomes and hitting the requirements. And many programs should not be expected to go all the way to I and get some sort of numerical impact measurement. It's A, just not possible. But B, if you're running a 2 or 3 hour course, it can be important without you being able to actually have to connect it to some intrinsic metric in the organization. If you have the other pieces and you can say people liked it and we have evidence that they are putting it into practice, that might be enough.
Yes, absolutely. And I think we've all been in that space where we're like, is it really necessary and needed? And I think that a lot of learning leaders have been in a space where they really know that they want to do measurement and they're talking about it. Maybe they're overloaded, and maybe that they know that implementation can be challenging, right? So if I think about our audience, and it might be helpful to share, like when you think about putting the measurement strategy into place and at scale, what would you recommend? What are the kind of the key steps?
Yeah. So the key steps are, I think, to within your organization first, identify if there is a standard. Now, if you're the person responsible for setting the standard, that's great. Pick one. I guess you can make one up, but probably just pick one, right? There's a bunch in the market, and say, this is how we're doing it, right? And then we built like a beginner guide. And then within the beginner guide, there was a paper for each one if you really wanted to get into the details. But the beginner guide just says, here it is. Here are the steps. It's easy to understand the model. What you need to then provide to people is how you actually expect them to do it, right? So for instance, for application, we said really the default approach, if you have less than this many people, is to do randomized interviews. And if you have more than this many people, it's to do a survey with these specific types of questions about application, right? And then if you've got other application, if you've got documents people are supposed to be accessing or metrics of tools that they're supposed to be using, great. But if you don't, we still have a standard approach for you. And then with Impact, we created a dashboard. We worked with our analytics team to create a dashboard. Now, again, not every program can be on the dashboard. Analytically, you need a high amount of completions, and then you need to wait a certain amount of time. But for those programs that are, we were able to say, here's the dashboard. And then if not, we were able to say, great. Well, you have to work with your business and identify what they have available. And if you're not on our dashboard and the business won't share any metrics with you, you don't have to do this one. Now, that might mean you don't get your approval or whatever, but it means we've looked at it and it doesn't exist, right? And that's one of the ways that we've operationalized, is by, instead of having each individual person trying to figure out, maybe I'm the first person who's tried to answer this question, right? We give that guidance to say, this is what we're doing across the organization. Now, if you're not the person setting that for your organization, I think the big question is to find out if there's any interest or hopefulness for that. Because otherwise, if you're doing it program by program, you're going to have to spend time building your own measurement approach for your own program. And that's going to be, it's not going to have the same returns, because what happens to us is now we're just starting to get our stakeholders more accustomed to seeing results in this way. Our teams don't have to make up their own measurement approach every way, and the business is more used to seeing the results come through in these categories. Without that, I recommend, again, just pick an approach and do your best. But ultimately, where we see the operationalization happening is when there is a standard across all the learning organization teams, so that people can not have to recreate the wheel.
Yeah, I love that. And I also loved your thought around, is there interest by the stakeholders, or right, like who you're working with to provide that measurement, and an interest in hearing what it is, right? And not always is that the case, right? So,
Right. And if you
it,
go up at the beginning and you
oh,
give them a context and you say, here's how we measure, we would do this and we would need this from you, either this much funding for us to do it, or in some cases, this metric from you, right? Do you have a baseline metric? Because sometimes people will say things like, well, yeah, I'd love people to, at the end of this training, my business outcome is I want people to be more efficient. That's a great, easy one. Okay, what's your current measure of efficiency? Oh, we don't have one. Okay, well, you can't expect us to create a metric that doesn't exist. We're the learning organization. You got to
right.
tell us how you're measuring efficiency now. If now we can help you come up with something qualitative, right? If you don't currently have a metric, but that's not you can't fault us at the end for not having data if you've said at the beginning that the data doesn't exist.
Everybody can relate to that. And it's sound advice. I think that there's also, we talked about, there's a difference between kind of justifying your program with metrics, and then providing actionable insights to the business. So from your perspective, share a little bit more about that. What does that really look like? What are the key differences there?
I know sometimes I get frustrated when people say this, but it's true. It is a mindset shift first, and then there's operational things behind it. But it's a mindset shift away from, I've got to justify that this program was good, right? Which is, you might have heard people talk about that as like vanity metrics or picking and choosing the case studies and examples that make us look good. To be honest, that's probably what most people do. All right, we got to the end and we have to show that it was good. And yes, we still show some lessons learned, whatever, but we show all these great things, right? I remember I had someone once, an operational person in the business, say, I keep getting told every year that this program is incredible, amazing, and super effective, and also that we need more money to redesign it. Which one is it? Is it amazing and having great results that everyone loves, and therefore we should keep running it and gather the efficiencies from what we've already developed? Or does it need to be redesigned because something didn't happen? Can't be both. And yet sometimes it feels like we're coming to people with both all the time. So that really got me thinking, right? If we can come to the business and say, we had a clear structure at the beginning, we agreed with you on it, right? You understood it, you told us what was available. We agreed on the business outcomes. We walked through, here's the data we said we would gather. We're not actually getting the business outcomes we wanted. That doesn't mean the business is not then, I don't think, well, maybe they will, but most of the time they don't come back in the situations we've seen and say, well, why did you do such a bad training? They say, oh, thank you for being a partner with us. You identified our outcomes. We as a team tried to accomplish them, and we as a team did not. So now I'm grateful for the clarity you're giving me that's saying this is not hitting my business outcomes, not angry that the course didn't get a 9.7 or whatever. I can't guarantee that, right? And you know your stakeholder best, right? There are always going to be some stakeholders somewhere that someone's told them to do this and handed them a budget, and all they want is for you to come out with a 9.7 success score. And in that case, I don't have any advice other than, do what you can on the other areas, right? But don't bash your head against the wall with measurement if your stakeholder's not going to be appreciating it. But many, many, many will. Now, what they don't appreciate is if you didn't have that conversation at the beginning, you went through, they didn't know really what they were expecting or what to measure, what the outcomes were. And at the end, the only piece of data they have is smile sheets. Well, then of course they want those smile sheets to be good. It's the only piece of data they have. But if you set it up clearly so that it's answering a question, then usually the behavior and the expectation will change.
Yeah, I mean, I know I've been guilty of that, early in
Me
my
too.
career where you bypass the essential first step that you shared earlier of what's the business outcome, right? What are we really looking to achieve, and what does that measurement look like if we're going to measure it? So if you bypass that, then you're right. We're looking for that 9.7.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
and I don't want to say that getting the business to share the business outcomes is easy either. It's not as easy as saying, "Could you please give me a list of between 1 and 4 single sentence business outcomes?" And then they write them down and hand them to you. No, it's a conversation, it's an education. Sometimes we have to come to them with suggestions and say, "These we think based on what you said, these might be the documentable business outcomes. Do you agree?" "Oh, no, no, not that." "Okay, well, let's," or they might say, "I can't answer that." Great. Who can? Because that part is critical and it's not easy. It's not easy.
No, but I appreciate the perspective on ensuring alignment, right? I think
Yes.
that if you're hearing what they're saying and you're interpreting it one way, verifying is an essential step for that alignment piece to be successful. So, well, I'd love to chat with you a little bit more about and shift topics a bit around AI. But before we do, is there anything else you'd like to add or any advice that you'd like to add for, measurement, either large initiatives that people may have or just in general.
I'll say a couple things. As long as you're thinking about it in a structured way and focused on finding the information rather than acting out of a sense of either fear or like, well, let me just gather what we have, right? But you're actually saying, what would actually answer the question we're trying to answer? And maybe we say we don't have that, but would this be the question we would love to answer? We don't know how yet. Maybe we partner together, right? But you're thinking about it in a structured way and you are looking for the actual answers and sharing what you can, you're going to be miles ahead of, just trying to grasp whatever you can get from that sense of fear or that sense of just trying to only show whatever's positive. We've done that approach. It doesn't work.
It needs to be real, one, positive, not so positive, right? But in that strategic thought. So I think, something you just said actually is perfect segue to what I would wanted to talk to you about is the word fear. When I think about AI, I think that there are those that they're fearful and I've at times been that way myself, right? And when we spoke previously, you had mentioned something that I really wanted to talk about and expand on was your perspective. You said, if you ask AI to replace you, it will. If you ask it to augment you, it will. So I'd really love for you to share with our audience a little bit more about what that means for you.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you for that transition of being coming out of a place of fear. I agree. I think this might be a big statement. Anybody who's not a little apprehensive is not paying attention. There is so much happening. Things are changing so quickly that it's normal to be a little fearful and apprehensive, or maybe a lot fearful and apprehensive, right? What we don't want to do is have that fear hamstring us from taking the next steps that are going to be the most effective for us and for our organizations and for our families, right? So this is not a podcast about the ethics of AI, what we should be doing as a society. I have different opinions about that, but this is more about if you're working in this field, right? What does it mean for you? And I'll give you an example, a very specific example. We're having a lot of questions in our organization about like, okay, what that traditional role of the developer, that learning developer that took all this content in, right? And then like turned it into something organized and usable. Well, that's one task that AI is pretty darn good at, right? Toss a bunch of stuff in and it'll come up with something that's relatively sleek. You can even put in activities, you can whatever, right? If you see your job as a learning developer, as somebody who can take a bunch of information and summarize it in a way that's clear, and then you ask AI to do that, what you normally would have done, and it takes it way less time and it does better, and then you hand that in. And then you do that again and you just hand that in. So you're working faster, but you're just asking it to do what you did before. The answer to why are we paying you is, I don't know. If you see your job as a value add, and if you have really truly believe that you have the skills of not just summarizing information, but really understanding now what that's me said and thinking, well, I'm actually going to change the order. They said it this way. If I actually start with this, and then I'm going to think what would be a great scenario to emulate that. Okay, I'm going to think about that. And I might ask the AI to help me think of 5 different options for a scenario. And then I pick the one I want, but then I pull it in and then I tweak it because it's not quite right. And then I go on to the next section and I say, I think first of all, saying, I think we need an activity here. That's you. That's not the AI. Now, you might use the AI to help you come up with an activity faster than you would have before. But if you just tell the AI, come up with an activity here, and then you just pop it in. Again, it's doing your job. If you say, I know the objective of this activity is to get them to understand this one specific thing. And then you look at 5 or 10 options generated by the AI, and then you pick one, but you tweak it, or you picked it, but it came up with a good one because you gave it a good prompt, right? You are adding value. You are saying, I am an expert in learning development and what a human person needs to see over this next 25 minutes, right? Now it's augmenting you because you are able to do something more quickly and better, but more importantly, better than it was before because now you have 10 activities to choose from instead of only having your own brain. So it's about that sense of like, oh, I'm going to have it do the part that I didn't actually really like, the long reading, and because I want to do the interesting part. But here's one more thing, and maybe going back on that all that reading and stuff. Sometimes you need to still ingest something as a human, because for you to be able to say, oh, I understand that concept that that leader is talking about, and I have an insight about how to share it that the AI didn't. You have to actually watch that video. You might ask the AI to help you understand the video, or give me a transcript so I can read it more quickly, or see if you can find other videos that are similar to this in my organization. Or I sometimes feel people wanting to skip this step of like personal human interact understanding. That's your value add. You need to keep that. It shouldn't mean, okay, now I can do 20 courses in the time that it took me to do 2. Okay, well, do you understand anything of what you're actually putting together? Could you pass that course that you just created? If not, then, what value are you adding other than being an information aggregator?
Wholeheartedly, yes. A lot of thoughts came to mind as you were sharing, and just a video example. I was thinking sometimes you watch a video, oftentimes you watch a video and it evokes a feeling and it gets you to think. And then where do people remember? They remember the emotions, they remember how they feel, right? So I think there's a component there too that we have to hold on to and make sure that we're still, that side of it is really important. And the critical thinking, I think, is a lot of what you were just referencing. And it's funny because I was just putting together an example. I was thinking it's summertime. So I was thinking about my son, and I was going to have ChatGPT put together a list of like things. How do you build your business for like, a simple one for the summer? And I was like, Shania, if you do that, you're not going to give him the ability to learn how to do that. So I think there's a component there too when we think about teaching critical skills or critical thinking skills, and why those are going to be more important than the future, and openness to learning how to do things. So I'm curious from that perspective, like the critical thinking and openness to learning, what do you think about that? And how important are those qualities going to matter in the future?
Yeah, I don't think you can undersell. It's hard because critical thinking is one of those skills that like everybody wants to have and thinks they should have, and it's hard to actually know what that actually means or how to build it up. But yes, I would say the discernment becomes the differentiatable skill, right? Could you look at, let's say, the GenAI generates 10 different 10-minute summaries of a topic. Could you look at them and tell which one is the best one and figure out how to make it better, right? Like only if you know something about the content area, really, right? It's not just about the structure. So I think, yes, one thing is you really have to shore that up. I think what I've seen more and more is that people were used to seeing if something looks polished and the words look good. We're used to assuming that there's quality behind it, because it used to mean that if it was polished and the words were good, the human had to put that together, and that indicates a certain amount of content knowledge or time or effort in the back end, right? Nowadays, I can't tell you the number of times when somebody has sent me something and it's 3 paragraphs or 4 paragraphs and it looks great and it's like a summary or for a training session or whatever. And I start reading it and I'm like, I don't really know what this is saying. There's too many words. It's very clearly AI generated, and it's not crisp. It's not focused. It doesn't really tell me what I'm trying to learn or trying to know, right? And so that amount of discernment and critical thinking to say it's not me, right? This seems like it's saying something, but it's not really saying anything, right? So to be able to recognize that, and then to also to be able to maintain it, right? And understand when more polish or more words is not necessarily the right way to go. Challenging ourselves to, again, just always be saying, I heard this at a conference once, and it was like, how do I want to be augmented? So let's say, okay, I'm not asking it to replace me. I'm asking it to augment me. How? Well, sit down and think, well, what if you were 2 of you, if you had 80 hours a week, what would you do? Oh, I'd learn this skill, right? Or I would expand my network in this area, or I would whatever. These are things I've always wanted to do, maybe at work or professionally, but I haven't had time to do. Okay, now focus on using the AI to help you enable you into those areas rather than just having it take away the work that you were already doing. And that is a great critical thinking builder, right? Because you have to think about your own skills, your own places that you want to grow. And then you have to sort of evaluate what AI tools and capabilities are going to help you get there.
That's a lot to evaluate. And I think about being overwhelmed at times, and especially for someone who's, in our space in L&D, who's trying to really stay current and evolve with the business and with AI, like where would you encourage them to start?
A lot of the things I'm quoting are things I've heard from other experts, David Chestnut, who is a great friend of both of ours, and other folks in Accenture, trying to make that shift from knowing, having to tell the Gen AI, whatever one you have, having to tell the Gen AI what you want, right? Sort of like a junior developer, because then you're like, well, I have to put all this together, and I have to tell it to do this, and I have to do it, and I might as well do it myself. And instead, asking, hey, using it as a thought partner, or hey, I'm trying to decide whether I should do X, Y, or Z for this. What questions? You don't even have to ask them for the answer. You can just say, what questions should I ask myself? Or just go ahead and say, I've got, put on your Monday to-do list. I've got all these things to do this week. What do you think I should prioritize? Right. And is there any ways that you think, that you can help me with any of this? Right. Going in and asking questions about, that way it takes off that initial challenge of like, I don't know what to go ask. I don't know what to use Gen AI for. You go and you say, here's my week. What should I use Gen AI for? Right. And it can tell you. And that makes it less of a hump to get over, and I think more incorporatable into your day. Another thing that I've tried just recently, actually, and I like, is actually blocking out, right now for me, it's only 30 minutes a week, but maybe an hour, to actually say, this is Gen AI time. I don't think we'll need that over time because we're going to get used to it, but it's so easy to say, actually, it would take me maybe 4 hours to get this Gen AI working well, and it's only going to take me 2 hours to do it myself. Maybe you're going to do it a bunch more times in the future, but every time it feels like it's going to take more time, right? So by putting in a little, just 30 minutes or an hour of, can call it playtime, right? That's what I've got mine called as, to just say, oh, try something you thought about doing with Gen AI that you just were like, it's going to take me some time to figure it out, and I don't have that time right now. Block it in and say that that's part of your professional development, and that's part of you staying up to date and able to offering the best to your clients. If you're not spending at least a little bit of time every week playing with it, then you're going to find it overwhelming, and you're not going to be able to get the best out of it.
I love that. And it really, really, truly hits me because I have a tendency sometimes when you're trying to go fast, right? And you're just trying to get things done. And it's like, well, I could work with AI to do that and have it repeatable, but right now I just need to put this out, right? Like, and so I keep reminding myself of the go fast to go slow, or go slow to go fast. Gosh, don't
Slow to go fast, yeah, or the work smart, not hard, right?
right,
It's
all of that. But I like the
so
idea of putting it on
difficult.
my calendar, which I have not done. At times like this morning, for Friday morning, I just needed a minute to be a little creative. And I went to a conference and saw that there's an app or AI for song generation, right? And
Oh, yes, yes,
yes,
I'm very familiar.
I was like, Just play with it. Just go see what it's like. Just experience it." And so I did that and shared it with a few people, and now the song is stuck in their head. So, but I love the advice of just putting it on your calendar, holding that space to continue to learn and just experiment with it, right? And see what
Yeah.
works for you. So,
Yeah, and call it call it Gen AI play, call it fun exploration, call it something that sounds enjoyable. And
mm,
if maybe something comes up in the day or two beforehand, you can say, "Oh, I don't have time now, but I'm going to do that in my Gen AI play time." Or if not, then you just goof off. You just ask it, what animal am I, based on my messages that I've shared with you before? Whatever, it's fun, you know?
mm,
Which personality test do you think I should take today, and make one up for me, right? I mean, you could do anything, right? Hopefully that takes away some of the fear, right? And once the fear is gone, then we can start to see it as a tool. Now, again, I'm not going to talk again about structurally what I think we should do as a society. That's a topic for another day, but for each individual learning person, day over day, week over week, you've got to do whatever you can to make sure it's not scary.
Before we wrap up today, I just wanted to ask you one more question. So if you have any advice around maybe one mindset shift, that you think that learning leaders specifically need to make right now, what would you recommend? What would you say?
Good question. Let me think about it for a minute. I'll say this, and I think it ties the measurement work in a little bit. That I've talked about. It ties AI in a little bit, and that thought is, for most of our profession, and I'm going to say learning leaders in corporate, but we're also talking about learning leaders in schools, right, and anywhere that anybody is trying to learn. We've kind of always known that one-to-one learning and individual coaching and specific feedback is like the best way to learn, but it hasn't been feasible, right? Because you're like, well, we only have one expert and we have 200 people who need to learn it, right? Now we got a classroom. And I think to look at Gen AI and say, wow, we can give people personalized feedback, the way we've been talking about and trying to do for 10 years, and building these paths and structuring people to go here and then go here. And then you got this test, and then we send you to this point in learning, but it had to all be done manually, and it was exhausting, and it was never as good as we wanted it to be. So telling yourself now, we can actually start to solve these problems where the business says this is a problem, and we say we're gonna help you solve it. We're going to help people learn this. And it might not be a class, and it might not be traditional development the way you're used to it, right? But the skills of helping people focus in their time and find the most efficient way to improve themselves in an area they want to go, that skill is not going away. It might not look like how you want it to, but if you think about, how do I keep the business outcomes in mind and keep them measurable? How do I see this AI as an opportunity to do what we've never done before rather than a challenge? There's no reason why everybody right now who's skilled as a learning developer can't become some type of learning path creator or coach, or like, okay, well, now I'm evaluating which conversational, I'm building AI conversation bots for people, and I'm trying to make sure that they're as accurate as possible, and I'm testing them first to make sure that they get a great experience. That hasn't been what a learning person does, but why can't it be? So seeing that as an opportunity to do even better what we've always wanted to do, rather than a challenge to what we've always done, I think would be my takeaway. And trusting that if we find the value and we connect it to the business and we provide guidance and structure to learners, there will always be space there.
Yeah, I do agree. And I think we can take that mindset approach to so many different areas in our lives, and looking at them as opportunities, right? The challenges as
Yeah.
opportunities, and shifting that. I do think there's a lot of opportunities, and I think we're going to see a lot of evolution, obviously, as we continue.
Mhm.
Well,
Mhm.
Christina,
When have
thank
we
you.
not, right? When have we
Sorry,
not?
go ahead.
I was just saying, when have we not? Like
You're
it's
right.
always changing, right? We're always expected to do more and to use the new technology to provide the best experience for our learners, and we should be, right? And now it's different in scale, but it's not different in quality. If the learner, and making sure that the organization is getting out of it what if you're teaching the learner something valuable in the organization, those objectives are aligned. So if we're helping with that, we're going to be okay.
Yes, we are. We're going to be better than okay, I think.
Yes.
Well, Christina, thank you so much for appearing on our show today. Truly
Of
appreciate
course.
your time. I don't know if you know this, but Training Pros, our company charity, is World Reforestation. And so we've planted over 4,000 trees to date around the world. And as a thank you, we will plant 5 trees in your name. Yeah, it's just a little way to say thank you, and truly appreciate you joining us on Learning Leaders Spotlight podcast today. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely.
Thanks for joining us for the latest episode of Learning Leader Spotlight, interviews with corporate L&D leaders. You'll find links in the show notes to any resources mentioned on today's show. If you're enjoying our podcast, please subscribe so you never miss an episode, and leave us a 5-star review.